What if the final judgment is not what you were told? What if the real test after death, or even before it, is not about punishment or reward, but about the weight of your own heart? The ancient Gnostics spoke of a moment beyond time, when the soul stands before a divine force, not the true God, but the Demiurge, the ruler of this material world. And there, a mysterious test begins, the trial of the heart. Imagine a cosmic scale where one side carries a single white feather and the other your heart. The question is, which side will rise? Which will fall? But what does this test truly mean? Why did so many ancient texts hide its symbolism, disguising it as myth or afterlife judgment? And could this test actually be happening now, within your everyday choices, without you realizing it? In this video, we'll uncover the hidden meaning behind the Demiurge's final test, what it represents, why only a few can face it, and how its secret may determine your awakening or your eternal return to this world of illusion. Stay with me until the end, because this revelation is one that religions have avoided for centuries, a truth about purity, balance, and the secret measure of the soul. And before we begin this journey into forbidden knowledge, subscribe to the channel and join thousands of seekers uncovering the mysteries that the world tried to bury. Because knowledge, true knowledge, is the only way to awaken from the illusion. For the Gnostics, the Demiurge was not a being of light, but a cosmic architect, a ruler who mistook himself for the ultimate God. He forged this material universe as a mirror of his own imperfection, beautiful, yes, but corruptible and deceptive. Inside this vast illusion, he placed the human soul, a spark of true divinity trapped within flesh and matter. But he could not fully extinguish its origin. That spark still remembers the realm of light. And so, the Demiurge designed trials to keep it bound, convinced of its impurity. Among these trials was the test of the heart, a spiritual judgment that determines whether the soul remains enslaved or awakens. It was said that when the soul approaches the threshold between worlds, the archons, the servants of the Demiurge, weigh it on a cosmic scale. On one side lies a feather, symbol of truth, purity, and spiritual lightness. On the other, the heart, symbol of human desire, attachment, and hidden guilt. If the heart is heavier than the feather, the soul falls back into the material cycle. If lighter, it ascends toward gnosis, the knowledge of its divine origin. But this test is not something that happens only after death. The Gnostics believed it happens constantly, in every choice you make, in every thought that drags you toward anger, fear, or ego. The feather and the heart are not objects on a scale. They are the two forces inside you. Every moment of your life, the Demiurge measures you, not with wrath, but with cunning, observing whether you remain enslaved by his illusions or begin to awaken to the invisible world beyond. Have you ever felt as if life itself were watching you, silently judging your actions? As if some higher power, unseen but present, weighed the purity of your intentions against the heaviness of your regrets? That sensation, that strange awareness, is the beginning of the test. For those who awaken, the world stops feeling random. Every event, every pain, every temptation begins to reveal its true nature. It's not punishment. It's calibration. The universe is balancing your heart. Some scholars point to Egyptian sources, especially the Book of the Dead, where the soul stands before Maat, goddess of truth, whose feather measures the heart of the deceased. But Gnostics reinterpreted this myth. They said, this is not the judgment of a god. It is the trap of the Demiurge. Because while the Demiurge measures weight, the true God measures light. The difference is immense. One is external judgment, the other, inner awakening. Now ask yourself, if your heart were weighed at this moment, would it rise or fall? Would it be bound by the gravity of the world, or as light as truth itself? In the Gnostic vision, awakening is not achieved through blind faith or ritual obedience. It is earned through inner purification, through the slow transmutation of the soul from lead to gold. The Demiurge's test is not an external punishment, but a mirror reflecting the density of your being. The heavier your attachments, pride, resentment, desire, guilt, the more your heart clings to matter, and the deeper you remain imprisoned in his labyrinth of illusions. To pass the final test is to understand that purity is not moral perfection, but energetic lightness, a liberation from the false self that believes it is separated from the divine. The Gnostics called this the anamnesis, the remembering, because true knowledge, or gnosis, is not learned. It is remembered from within. Each act of compassion, forgiveness, or silent truth loosens the chains of density. Each moment of hatred or greed, on the other hand, forges new iron around the heart. They spoke of a sacred process, a secret alchemy that happens in the invisible chambers of the soul. The first step is recognition, to see that the world around you is not the ultimate reality, but a projection of the Demiurge's order, the system of illusion. The second step is purification, freeing the heart from emotional weights through conscious acts of truth. The third step is illumination, when the inner spark begins to shine so strongly that no archon can veil it. And finally, union, when the divine within you reunites with the source beyond this cosmos. In ancient texts, such as the Pistis Sophia, the soul of Sophia, the embodiment of divine wisdom, descends into chaos and is swallowed by darkness. But her cries for the light are heard, and through her repentance, she rises again. The Gnostics saw in her story the map of every human soul. We fall into matter, blinded by the illusions of power, beauty, and control, until we finally remember where we came from. Only then does the alchemical process begin. The heart begins to turn weightless, the scales begin to tilt, and the soul starts to rise. This is the true meaning of the final test. The Demiurge does not judge you as an enemy. He observes whether your heart still belongs to him. He cannot hold what has become light, but he can endlessly recycle what remains heavy. To awaken is to make his judgment irrelevant, to become so pure that you transcend his laws of cause and effect, just as gold no longer rusts in fire. Think about your own life for a moment. Every conflict, every heartbreak, every betrayal, could they be part of this purification? Could the people who hurt you have been instruments of the test, placed to reveal whether your heart would grow heavier or lighter? If that is true, then nothing you've lived has been meaningless. It was preparation, refinement, the subtle art of becoming weightless. Now that we've uncovered this hidden alchemy, we must go deeper into how the archons guard the gates of ascension and how the soul must cross their 7 realms of illusion to finally escape the Demiurge's dominion. According to the ancient Gnostics, when the soul begins to awaken and loosen its ties to matter, it faces not a single judgment, but 7 gates each guarded by an archon, a cosmic warden serving the Demiurge. These are not literal gates in the sky, but states of consciousness, thresholds the soul must cross to free itself from illusion. Every gate tests a different part of the human heart, peeling away the layers that bind it to the material order. The first gate is fear. Here the soul faces the archon of survival, the voice that says, "You will die without me." It is the primal fear that keeps humans chained to their flesh, constantly seeking safety in possessions, status, and control. To pass this gate, the soul must realize that it was never the body that lived, but the light within it. The second gate is desire. The archon here whispers, "Without pleasure, you are nothing." He feeds on craving, on endless hunger, for validation, power, or comfort. The soul that learns to see desire as a reflection of divine longing rather than its fulfillment passes through, lighter than before. The third is pride. The archon of pride stands tall, wearing crowns made of the souls that sought to be gods through ego. He tests whether the seeker will choose humility over self-importance, wisdom over being right. Many fall here, believing their awakening makes them superior. Not realizing pride is the subtlest chain of all. The fourth gate is guilt, a realm thick with memories and remorse. The archon here offers you mirrors of everything you regret, whispering, "You are unworthy of light." To pass, one must forgive oneself completely, understanding that guilt is another form of attachment, the shadow of a misunderstood lesson. At the fifth gate waits despair. The archon of this realm is silence itself. He does not speak. He lets you drown in emptiness until you realize that the void you fear is not death but rebirth. When you can rest inside that silence without seeking to fill it, the gate dissolves. The sixth is illusion. Here, the Demiurge himself appears, or rather, his mask. He can look like an angel, a savior, or even your own ideal self. This is the final temptation, to worship the image of light instead of its source. Only those who recognize that true divinity cannot be seen will pass through without bowing to the false radiance. And finally, the seventh gate, attachment to the world. The archon here shows you everything you have loved: faces, memories, the beauty of the earth, the warmth of human connection. Many souls fail this last test because they confuse detachment with coldness. But the Gnostics taught that true purity is not the absence of love. It is loving without possession. When you can hold the entire world in your heart and yet let it go, the scale finally balances. The feather rises, the heart shines, and the Demiurge loses his hold. In this moment, the soul becomes what the Gnostics called the luminous one, the human who no longer belongs to matter, but to memory, to eternity. The archons step aside, powerless before the light they cannot comprehend. Now the question becomes, how does this revelation affect you here in this life? Are these gates waiting beyond death, or are they reflections of the emotional trials you already face every day? In the next part, we'll explore how this hidden cosmology unfolds within human experience, and how your daily struggles might already be the Demiurge's test unfolding before your eyes. The Gnostics taught that the Demiurge's trial was not a distant post-mortem event, but a living ordeal, happening now, in each heartbeat, in every thought that rises from within. The scales of the cosmos are not hidden in the heavens. They exist within your chest. Every reaction, every choice, every silence is weighed. That is why the world feels so personal, because it is. The universe is not punishing you. It is testing you. When you feel anger and choose patience, the heart grows lighter. When you act with greed, even in secret, it grows heavy. When you forgive someone who betrayed you, a feather appears upon your scale. And when you condemn others in the name of righteousness, the Demiurge smiles, for he knows you still play his game. The archons do not need to appear before you with wings or eyes of flame. They speak through your daily frustrations, your small humiliations, your recurring fears. The test hides in the ordinary. Think of the last time you were consumed by envy. Did you feel how it pulled you downward? How your thoughts became slower, darker, heavier? That is the gravity of the Demiurge. His realm feeds on density, on the soul's emotional weight. But when you act with compassion, even toward yourself, something subtle happens. You feel expansion, a sudden lightness, as if your chest could breathe for the first time. That is not just emotion. It is metaphysical evidence that the scale is tipping. The Gnostics described this process as kenosis, the emptying of the self. The more the ego releases its illusions, the more room the divine spark has to expand. Yet this is where most seekers fail. They think awakening means escaping the world, hiding from its noise. But in truth, the Demiurge's final test is faced within the world, in traffic, in disappointment, in betrayal, in the moments when no one is watching. The soul that passes through life unscathed by its illusions has already transcended the need for any afterlife judgment. So how does one live this test consciously? The first secret is awareness. Observe your emotions as if they were not yours. When you feel anger, watch it without judgment. When you feel pride, name it without shame. The moment you observe an emotion, you take away its power to weigh you down. The second secret is truth. Every lie you tell, even small ones, binds you to matter. Every truth spoken from the heart purifies it. Truth is the fire that burns illusion, the force that makes the feather rise. And the third secret is remembrance, the daily act of recalling that you are not this world's creation. When you wake up, remind yourself, I am the light trapped in matter, but not owned by it. When you sleep, imagine your heart placed on a scale beside a feather. Ask yourself honestly, what did I carry today that I should have released? That simple question, whispered nightly, begins the purification that priests and scholars have feared, because a person who measures themselves by truth becomes ungovernable. When your heart becomes as light as that feather, the world's tragedies no longer break you. You will still feel sorrow, but not despair. You will still love deeply, but without attachment. You will still act in the world, but not belong to it. That is the sign that the Demiurge's balance no longer binds you. You have turned the instrument of judgment into a tool of awakening. And perhaps this is the greatest irony of all. The Demiurge believes he is testing you, but every act of balance, every forgiveness, every honest breath is testing him, revealing whether his illusion can still control a soul that remembers its origin. Now we move to the deeper mystery. What happens after the test is passed? What becomes of the soul that achieves perfect balance, whose heart and feather are one? Is awakening the end of the journey, or only the beginning of a greater return? When the soul finally passes the Demiurge's trial, it awakens into a silence that no words can reach. The Gnostics called this the pleroma, the realm of fullness, the unbroken field of divine consciousness from which all beings once emerged. In the pleroma, there is no scale, no feather, no heart, for duality dissolves. The soul no longer asks, am I pure enough? Because purity is its natural state. It remembers that the test was never about proving worth, but about remembering origin. To understand this state, imagine the ocean before the first wave formed, calm, infinite, self-aware. Every soul is a drop that forgot it belonged to that sea. The Demiurge's world is the storm that made us believe we were separate. But once the soul regains balance, it stops fighting the current and simply returns to the source. The archons cannot follow it there. Their power exists only in division, not unity. That is why the pleroma is not a place, but a state of consciousness, an awakening, where the false light of the Demiurge fades, and the true light within expands endlessly. Ancient texts describe this return as a kind of second birth. The Gospel of Truth says, the one who has knowledge is a being whose heart has become light, and he dances within the light that never ends. It's not that the soul escapes existence. It becomes transparent to it. Life continues, but without distortion. Pain may still appear, but it no longer leaves a scar. This is what Jesus meant in Gnostic interpretation when he said, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Freedom is not absence of suffering. It is seeing through it. It's realizing that every wound was a doorway, every shadow a teacher, every weight an invitation to remember the feather. When the Demiurge's illusion finally collapses, the soul perceives the hidden order behind all things. What looked like chaos was instruction. What felt like abandonment was initiation. What seemed like punishment was purification. In this state, the soul no longer prays for salvation. It becomes the prayer itself. Every heartbeat is gratitude, every breath a hymn to the source. The world remains, but it loses its power to enslave. That is why those who glimpse the pleroma often describe an unshakable peace, a serenity so profound it cannot be explained, only lived. But here lies a paradox that even the ancient sages pondered. If the soul has returned to fullness, why does it sometimes descend again? Why do enlightened beings come back to the world of matter? The Gnostics answered with a single luminous thought, compassion. The awakened soul returns not out of karma or duty, but out of love for those still trapped in the maze. Like Sophia herself, it descends once more, not to be tested, but to guide. The Demiurge cannot comprehend this act, for love is the one force outside his control. He can measure the heart's weight, but not its light. And so, in the greatest twist of the cosmic story, the test that once enslaved humanity becomes the tool of its liberation. Every soul that passes it helps to weaken the illusion for all others. The balance begins to shift on a collective scale, and the prison of matter starts to crack. Now the question is, what does this mean for us here, still walking through the fog of daily life? How can we live in remembrance of the pleroma while our feet still touch the dust of the Demiurge's world? In the next block, we will unveil how to embody this awakening, how to carry the feather within your heart while living among those who still believe the scale is real. To live after awakening is the greatest mystery of all. For once the veil falls, you no longer belong entirely to this world, but neither do you fully escape it. You become something in between, a messenger, a bridge between realms. The Gnostics called such beings Hylic transcenders, souls who have seen through the illusion but remain within it, radiating quiet light amid the shadows. And this, they said, is the final and most delicate stage of the Demiurge's test, not escaping matter, but walking through it without being consumed. The heart that has become light must now remain light in the density of life. That is the true measure of mastery. Many reach moments of illumination in silence or isolation, during meditation, prayer, or revelation. But the true test begins when they return to the noise of the world. Can the balance remain when confronted with injustice, temptation, and suffering? Can one's inner feather remain weightless while surrounded by a storm of heaviness? To live between two worlds means understanding that reality operates on two frequencies. The first is the visible realm, the domain of form, time, and consequence, governed by the Demiurge's order. The second is the invisible realm, the domain of essence, eternity, and truth, governed by the source. Before awakening, these two worlds seem separate. After awakening, you realize they are layered upon each other like shadow and light. What you call life is merely the intersection of both. The awakened heart no longer reacts to the outer world as if it were ultimate. It sees events as symbols, conversations as mirrors, and coincidences as instructions from the invisible. When you suffer loss, it is not fate punishing you. It is the feather being tested against your heart. When you meet someone who provokes you, it is not a random encounter. It is the archon of pride wearing a familiar face. When you feel abandoned by God, it is not his absence. It is the Demiurge's final illusion before your next rise. The secret of this stage lies in a single act, remembering while living. Every moment must become an act of remembrance. When you wake, when you eat, when you speak, remember that you are the divine spark hidden within the human experience. This memory transforms every action into sacred ritual. Washing your hands becomes purification. Walking becomes pilgrimage. Speaking truth becomes exorcism of illusion. The Gnostics believed that by infusing daily life with awareness, one reprograms the Demiurge's own machinery, turning his prison into a temple. But awareness alone is not enough. The heart must also remain pure, and purity is an active force, not a static state. It is not achieved once and kept forever. It must be renewed constantly, like breathing. The archons still whisper, even to awakened souls. They adapt, becoming subtler. Once you transcend greed, they tempt you with spiritual pride. Once you overcome fear, they test you with indifference. Once you silence judgment, they tempt you with superiority disguised as compassion. That is why the wise ones of every age have warned that enlightenment is not the end of temptation. It is the beginning of a higher form of it. To remain pure amid imperfection, the Gnostic masters practiced inner balance, not rejecting the world, but holding it gently, like a fragile child. They knew that to despise matter is to fall into the Demiurge's trap once more, for hatred, even of illusion, still binds you to it. The true initiate walks through the market and the temple with the same peace, seeing no separation between sacred and profane. They do not flee the city to find God. They find God in the city itself, in the dust, in the crowd, in the cry of a stranger. The Gospel of Thomas captures this beautifully in a single saying attributed to Jesus. When you make the two one, and when you make the inner as the outer, and the above as the below, then you will enter the kingdom. The two, here are the feather and the heart, the divine and the human, light and shadow. Making them one does not mean erasing difference. It means balancing them so perfectly that duality itself becomes transparent. Imagine then living your life as this balancing act. Every conversation becomes an echo of eternity. Every difficulty is not a curse, but a test of weight. When someone offends you, instead of reacting, you pause. You feel the feather tremble on the scale, and you decide whether your heart will remain light. That pause, that single breath of consciousness, is where awakening lies. There is another paradox here. Once you live from the awakened heart, you begin to see that even the Demiurge, once feared, is part of the divine drama. The Gnostics said that ignorance itself serves a higher purpose. It gives the soul something to awaken from. Without darkness, light cannot be realized. Without bondage, freedom has no meaning. Thus, the Demiurge's test, once seen as tyranny, becomes the greatest teaching. The jailer, unknowingly, becomes the guide. When this understanding matures, compassion blooms naturally. You begin to see that every person around you is also being weighed, not by divine wrath, but by their own choices. The cruel are not evil, they are heavy. The kind are not saints, they are lighter. Every soul is on its journey to balance, some slower, some faster. And so judgment dissolves, replaced by empathy. You stop trying to change people and start shining, because light teaches best by being itself. It is here that the awakened soul fulfills its highest calling, to serve as reminder. Not preacher, not savior, reminder. Just as Sophia descended again to help others remember, you too carry that light of remembrance into the collective dream. You will not always be understood. Some will resist your calm, others will fear your silence. But their reactions are also part of the test, both theirs and yours. So, if the Demiurge still watches, let him. Let him measure your heart against the feather again and again, for now the outcome is no longer uncertain. Every act of kindness tilts the balance. Every honest word disarms illusion. Every quiet acceptance of pain refines your gold. The world may remain a labyrinth, but your path through it is straight. This is the true awakening, not fleeing the illusion, but walking within it as one who knows it for what it is. The awakened heart does not float above the world. It beats within it, lighter than air, stronger than stone. Now, as we approach the end, one final revelation remains. If the Demiurge's test was never about condemnation, if awakening is not escape but remembrance, then what is the ultimate purpose of all this? Why were we ever placed in a realm of illusion at all? In the final block, we will bring everything together, the secret reason behind existence itself, and the final invitation that awaits every seeker standing before the scales. At the heart of every hidden teaching, beneath the symbols and myths, lies a paradox. If the true God is perfect and complete, why would he allow the Demiurge to exist at all? Why create a world where souls must suffer, forget, and fight to remember who they are? This question haunted the ancient Gnostics as much as it haunts the modern seeker. Yet their answer was not despair. It was revelation. The Gnostics said the Demiurge's world exists for one purpose only, to reveal the strength of divine light through the illusion of darkness. Just as a flame cannot be seen in daylight, the soul cannot recognize its brilliance until it stands amid shadow. Without ignorance, wisdom would have no contrast. Without bondage, freedom would have no value. The test of the Demiurge is not cruelty, it is reflection. Through it, the source experiences its own awakening through you. Every moment of struggle, every tear, every failure was never meaningless. It was the spark's pilgrimage back to its origin. The pain you've carried was the friction that polished your soul until it became a mirror for divine light. And when you finally remember, when the veil lifts, even the Demiurge's face is revealed as part of the greater whole. The jailer, the gate, the feather, the heart, all dissolve into a single truth. There was never a separation at all. This is why the ancient masters called the awakened soul a living eon, a fragment of eternity reborn in time. They said that once you pass the test, the universe itself begins to change around you. The external world softens, synchronicities multiply, inner peace radiates like sunlight beneath the skin. Because awakening does not end the test, it transforms it. You stop living as a soul being tested and begin living as the consciousness that designed the test in the first place. You become both the examiner and the examined, the question and the answer, the heart and the feather. But here is the hidden danger. Knowledge without love becomes another chain. The Gnostics warned that many seekers who awaken fall into isolation, believing themselves separate from the world's ignorance. Yet that separation is just another illusion. The purpose of awakening is not escape, it is participation. The truly awakened soul does not flee the world, it redeems it. Every act of truth, compassion, and forgiveness dissolves a small fragment of the Demiurge's false order. Through awakened beings, light re-enters creation. This is the secret of the pleroma within matter, the divine light hidden even in the densest forms. You are never meant to abandon earth, but to sanctify it. You are the bridge between heaven and soil, the breath between the eternal and the ephemeral. Every time you choose love over judgment, clarity over confusion, or forgiveness over vengeance, you perform the hidden alchemy of God. You tilt the cosmic scale. You lighten the collective heart of humanity. So perhaps the real question was never, do you have the power to pass the Demiurge's final test? But rather, do you have the courage to live as if you already passed it? Because in truth, you did. Every moment of awareness, every act of lightness is proof that your soul remembers. And remembrance is awakening. Now, take a moment to feel your own heart. Imagine it glowing within your chest, pulsing gently beside a white feather suspended in still air. No noise, no judgment, just the quiet knowing that you are both being measured and measuring yourself. If you can feel even a flicker of peace in that image, you've already begun to awaken. The Demiurge loses power the instant you realize the test was never about fear, but about balance. And that is why this knowledge was hidden, because a humanity that remembers its divine origin cannot be ruled. A soul that weighs itself by truth no longer bends to illusion. That is the revolution the Gnostics died for, not against empires or religions, but against forgetting. So now, the invitation is yours. Walk into the world with a lighter heart. Let every encounter remind you of the feather. Let every shadow remind you that you carry light. Let every hardship remind you that you are being refined, not destroyed. This is how you keep the ancient memory alive, not through worship, but through awareness. Not through separation, but through participation. If this message resonated with you, if something within you remembered a truth you didn't know you had forgotten, then do one simple thing. Subscribe to this channel and become part of this circle of remembrance. Each video, each revelation, each question we explore together keeps the flame of Gnosis alive in a world that has long forgotten it. Leave your reflection in the comments. Tell me, what do you think your heart would weigh if placed on the scales today? Would it rise or would it fall? Your answer is not for me. It's for you, because the search for truth does not end here. This is only the beginning. The real journey starts when you begin to live as one who knows that the Demiurge's final test is not after death, but within life itself. And every breath you take, every choice between love and fear, tips the scale. So ask yourself, before the next dawn arrives, is your heart light enough to rise?